Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of NFT Collector, episode 3 today. A solo guest this time. He's managed to escape the grasp of the PvP format. We've got DCinvestor, who I'm very excited to be talking to today. DC, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Piers. I'm really excited to be on with you guys.
Could you kick us off with a bit of background on yourself and talk to us about what you're doing prior to this? What led you down this path?
I've been in the crypto space for several years, got into Bitcoin back in 2013, bought the top of Bitcoin at that point, ended up selling it during the bear market. Wish I had held on to that Bitcoin. Got into Ethereum in around 2016, and I was doing that while I was working in my career as a public sector management consultant, which I did for about 15 years. I decided to leave my job as a consultant in February of 2021 and basically just focus on the crypto space full time, and now I engage in the space as a project advisor and angel investor. Somehow along the way became an accidental NFT collector, as we'll say.
Awesome. Maybe you could sort of walk us down. What exactly was it that led you towards the collecting side of things? What was it that sparked your interest with NFTs and sort of got you engaged?
Sure. I've always liked collecting. I like to collect stuff like stamps when I was younger, but the realities of like modern life, and I just moved, so pardon my echoey house here, but I was living in a pretty small apartment. I didn't have room to collect a lot of stuff. So NFTs just kind of fit into that really well because they don't take up any space. I think I bought my first CryptoPunk on January 23rd, 2021. I honestly thought I was just going to buy one. I just kept buying them. I ended up with like 6 punks at the end of it. And 2021 was really, I think, the year of NFTs, looking back on it in hindsight. After getting involved with CryptoPunks, I started talking with people in the Discord, and they pointed me to this site called ArtBlocks. And I was like, this is super interesting. And the genre that really caught my attention was generative art. But I went in and I bought Genesis number 0. It was no small chunk of change, but I could tell that something big was happening here. There's this really interesting dynamic. Work is being created on chain when a user submits the transaction hash to buy a piece of art. The algorithm mints it in a deterministic way based on randomness that the user. So I have a pretty extensive generative art collection. Generative art, I think, will be looked back on as one of the most important genres of NFT art ever. Art-wise, generative art and blockchain are kind of like a match made in heaven.
I love that. No, it's super cool. Well, yeah, I don't know whether you'd be able to walk through the gallery. I know we discussed it, talk about the rationale that went into building them and some of the exciting and fun memories along the way.
This is my gallery site, which is accessible at gallery.so/DCinvestor. I don't believe people should be consuming their NFTs on like OpenSea. Like, it's just not the best place to view art, in my opinion. It's like putting up fine art in like a Walmart or an eBay or something like that. I'm going to jump to the CryptoPunks. The fourth one that I bought was actually 294, which I've famously been using as my avatar on and off on social media. I have no desire to sell any of these. I started to spend more time in the Discord, and I learned about a new collection that was just released by an artist called Dmitry Cherniak called Ringers. It was kind of the breakout moment for on-chain generative art. I really all of a sudden understood the aesthetic value of generative art. One of the more interesting ones that I bought was Ringer number 700. 729 was also a really interesting one.
That's awesome. I love those picks. Yeah, would love to like sort of zoom out a bit then, just talking about the like broader sort of collection composition.
I think some of the most important pieces that I have are here at the beginning with the Autoglyphs. Autoglyphs were actually created by Larva Labs back in 2019. This is basically what inspired a generation of generative art. Everything else in this gallery, not that it all directly draws from Autoglyphs, kind of looks back on these works. And then going into Chromie Squiggle, Genesis, and Construction Token Archetype by Chetil Goli. This was also like a really interesting set that came on the heels of Ringers. We got to talk about Fidenza for a second. This was another set that kind of just captivated the public imagination of what art created by a machine could look like. But a lot of people looked at this and they're like, did a machine make that? It looks like a human made it. And that was kind of the genius of Tyler Hobbs. And I think some of these collections are really important and foundational to on-chain generative art. These MFers, which is a project created by an artist, Sartoshi, because he released them with the CC0 license. There's a really vibrant and dynamic community evolving around them. And CC0 stands for the Creative Commons 0 license, where the creator releases the work into the public domain, so anyone can use it. In effect, nobody owns it. And people are just creating for the sake of creating. I think that Creative Commons 0 assets are an experiment which need to be tried in the spirit of public blockchains, in the spirit of open source software and ownership. I want to see this experiment play out. I think the value proposition of it really centers around the idea of, if we assume that the value of most art is actually based on memes, the idea of memetics driving value accrual, people agreeing that this is something that's valuable and interesting, I would like to see some of that value accrue to open source public domain assets. And that was why I bought my CrypToadz. These were one of the first assets released under that CC0 license. I bought 2 Nouns and I was gifted this Punks. These Noun glasses are becoming somewhat iconic. These glasses have been featured in Super Bowl ads, they've been featured on Bud Light cans, they've been featured in other places. My suspicion is that over the very long term, some of these CC0 projects are going to become hugely valuable. After the sale of the CryptoPunks and Meebits IP to Yuga Labs, it opened my eyes further to see that these communities that are really developing freeform organically, this community was built by its participants and was sold by its creator.
Absolutely. I'm curious, are there any NFTs in your portfolio which you regret buying?
I probably wish I didn't buy quite as many Meebits, to be honest. So if there's one collection I regret going kind of heavy into, and not that I've done poorly with the Meebits, but yeah, I probably wish I didn't buy like 30. But I am interested to see what Yuga Labs does with them. Maybe they become these metaverse characters and get a second life through that.
What would you suggest is your best performing NFT? Fully acknowledging you have no intent to sell.
I had some people tell me what my portfolio is worth at the near top.
But you can't tease that without telling us. So what was it? What was the estimate that this person told you?
They said at the top of the bull market, I think they said that my collection was worth $100 million.
Damn.
I'm not really fixated on near-term value. I'm more interested in what's going to accrue value over like 5 to 20 years.
What would you suggest is the one NFT that you wish you could have bought, but for whatever reason didn't? The one that got away, the one that keeps you up at night in DC's collection. Well, not in DC's collection.
I wish I had bought more X-Copy 1-of-1s, to be honest. One of these artists who kept creating through the entire bear market maybe will become the most famous crypto artist of all time. It's got this crazy, jarring aesthetic. I just didn't get it. But then as I started to dive into his work, I realized there's some really interesting social commentary happening. And I think there's a lot of artists like that that are creating today, going to be remembered as basically like a future Monet or Picasso.
I love that. Yeah, I'd be very interested as well, like what you kind of got your eye on at the moment. What's really standing out to you? You said if we go into a bear market, I mean, we kind of are in a bear market.
I recently bought many of these Memories of Keelan by Emily Shi, and this was a recent drop on ArtBlocks. To me, it's such a stunningly beautiful set. It kind of has an Asiatic flair to it. There's not a lot of quality generative art, which really hits that mark. You can see I went a little crazy buying these. I like to just let people get the FOMO out of their system. I like to buy when they've forgotten about it, and that's what I did here with Memories of Keelan.
When you reflect on your journey and this path that you've been down building out this collection, what would you say are some of the core learnings that you've had over time throughout this whole process?
You've got to be true to your authentic collector self. If you try to collect what other people find interesting, you're going to ultimately end up missing the mark. Focus on what you really enjoy collecting. I think the second thing is don't FOMO. It's like, just don't let the market lose interest. If it's still valuable, if it's still important, it'll still be there when you want to come back to it.
Wanted to ask you sort of a quick fire question. You find 185 ETH in your wallet, $500,000, I guess at these prices. You can only spend it on a single NFT. What do you go for?
I don't know if it's quite enough to buy one right now. It might be a little short, but I would definitely get an Autoglyph. Frankly, I wish I bought more Autoglyphs while I could. Don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with my collection of 6 here. I kind of dismissed them at first, but if I had really understood, I probably would have bought double this amount. Basically, not even a question for me, to be honest.
I love that. Yeah, DC, it's been a pleasure having you on. Really appreciate you making the time. It's been great for people to see the man behind the punk and learn a little bit more about your collecting philosophy and your journey. Excited to see what the audience makes of it and get their feedback over time.
Thanks, Piers. This conversation was a ton of fun, and I hope your viewers enjoy it.